She looks like your dream until she becomes your biggest regret. Let's be honest, some of the most painful lessons a man learns don't come from enemies, but from the woman he once thought was everything. She was beautiful, magnetic, maybe even intoxicating. And at first, she made you feel like the only man on earth. But somewhere along the line, something changed. Not all at once, but gradually. The tension grew. The disrespect crept in. The arguments didn't resolve, they escalated. And you found yourself questioning your sanity, your worth, and even your masculinity. You're not alone. Thousands of men, especially strong, ambitious men, fall into this exact trap, seduced by the surface, unaware of the storm beneath. You're told to be patient, to communicate more, to fix things. But what if you're not the problem? What if the woman in your life isn't who you think she is? This video isn't about hating women, it's about protecting men, protecting you, from manipulation disguised as love, from beauty used as a weapon, from relationships that feel like emotional warfare. Stoic wisdom teaches us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength starts with clarity. Clarity about the signs you've ignored, the red flags you brushed off, and the truths you needed but didn't want to hear. If you've ever felt confused by a woman's behavior, this is the clarity you've been searching for. Because once you see these signs, you can never unsee them. Let's get into it. Sign 1. She argues to dominate, not to resolve. Let's get real about something that catches a lot of men off guard. Arguments are normal. Disagreements happen in every relationship. But when every conversation turns into a battlefield and you feel like you're constantly being backed into a corner, you're not dealing with a woman who wants peace. You're dealing with a woman who wants power. When a woman argues to dominate, her goal isn't connection, it's control. It starts small. A harmless disagreement over dinner plans turns into a cold war. She nitpicks, interrupts, raises her voice not to be heard, but to drown you out. And the most telling part? There's no intention to listen, no curiosity about your perspective, and absolutely no apology even when she's clearly wrong. Take Ryan, 34, and Jessica, 32. They'd been dating for a year when things started shifting. At first, debates were playful. But soon, Jessica began pushing buttons more often. Every time Ryan tried to express frustration, she flipped it back on him. If he brought up her constant lateness, she'd respond with, "Well, maybe if you were more exciting, I'd be on time." That's not communication. That's psychological warfare wrapped in sarcasm. Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Ryan eventually stopped reacting. Not because he was weak, but because he realized he was being baited into fights he could never win. He saw that these weren't disagreements meant for resolution, they were staged battles meant to establish hierarchy. And here's the deeper danger. When you stay in this dynamic too long, it chips away at your confidence. You start over, explaining. You try to fix things that aren't yours to fix. You begin to question your own reality. That's the effect of a dominant arguing style. It keeps you emotionally off balance while making her feel in control. This is not a call to avoid all confrontation. On the contrary, healthy conflict is essential. But there's a clear difference between conflict that seeks clarity and conflict that thrives on chaos. If you find yourself walking on eggshells, rewording sentences to avoid a blow-up, or holding in how you feel just to keep the peace, that's not peace. That's quiet submission. A woman who respects you will still challenge you, yes, but she won't try to dominate you. She'll argue with the intent to understand, not to humiliate. She'll hold space for disagreement without trying to crush your voice. So, what do you do if you recognize this in your relationship? You stop fighting for approval and start observing the pattern. You emotionally detach, even if physically you're still present. You reframe your role in the dynamic. And most of all, you set boundaries, not by yelling or matching her intensity, but by calmly refusing to engage in conversations that are clearly meant to provoke, not resolve. And here's a truth you need to remember. If she needs to win every argument, she will lose you eventually. Because a man who values his peace will always walk away from chaos. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a relationship where every disagreement felt like a test you were destined to fail? Drop it in the comments below and type, "I protect my peace." And stay with me, because the next sign exposes something even more subtle yet just as dangerous. You don't want to miss this. Let's keep going. Sign 2. She disrespects your mother quietly, but deeply. You want to know a subtle but devastating sign that the relationship is heading off a cliff? It's when she disrespects your mother, not with loud insults, not with open rebellion, but with quiet contempt, the kind you can only feel. Maybe she rolls her eyes when your mom calls. Maybe she makes offhand comments that seem harmless on the surface but are laced with passive aggression. Your mom's nice, a little too involved, don't you think? Or maybe she forgets to show appreciation for the woman who raised you, skipping birthdays, avoiding meaningful conversations, or always having something better to do than join family events. See, this isn't about your mom being perfect. No parent is. This is about the energy of respect, or the lack of it. Because here's the truth. A woman who subtly disrespects your mother often reveals how she'll treat you in the long run. Not today, not tomorrow, but when the mask drops, when her emotional leverage is full and her commitment to the relationship becomes more about control than connection. Stoic wisdom reminds us that we don't control how others behave, we only control how we respond. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In this context, the injury isn't about physical conflict, it's about emotional neglect, disguised as just being honest or setting boundaries. Now, let's go a little deeper. A woman who lacks respect for your roots will struggle to truly connect with your future. Think about that. She doesn't have to be best friends with your mom, but she does need to understand what your mother represents, your past, your values, your emotional heritage. If she belittles that even subtly, she's belittling you. And here's where most men get it wrong. They excuse the behavior. They rationalize it. She's just independent. My mom can be a bit much. It's just her personality. No, brother, it's a warning shot. A woman who loves you respects what shaped you. She doesn't have to like every detail of it, but she should never weaponize your origins. And if you call it out, watch her reaction. If she listens, reflects, and genuinely adjusts, you might have someone emotionally mature. But if she gets defensive, blames you, or flips it back on your mom, that's not partnership, that's projection. It's a tactic to create distance between you and your emotional support system, and that's dangerous. Stoicism teaches us about boundaries not as walls, but as filters. Epictetus once said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." The moment you start redefining your boundaries based on her manipulations, you're surrendering your center. That's how emotional domination starts, not through fire, but through slow erosion. And make no mistake, she's watching. She's seeing how far she can push, how deep she can dig, and whether you'll choose her opinion over your own backbone. The man who lets his family be quietly disrespected becomes a man she eventually stops respecting herself. So how do you respond? With calm, with strength, with clarity. You draw the line not for drama, but for dignity. You make it clear, I don't expect you to love my mom the way I do, but I do expect you to respect her. If she can't handle that, then she can't handle you. This is your test, not just as a son, but as a man. Because if you don't stand up for the people who shaped you, you'll never build a foundation strong enough to lead the life you were meant for. Comment below, I protect my roots. La. If you've ever felt this quiet disrespect and know it's time to reclaim your standards. And stay with me, what's coming. Next we'll show you the one thing she does when she's testing the limits of your strength without saying a word. Let's keep going. Sign 3. She competes with you instead of supporting you. This one is subtle but deadly, and most men miss it until it's too late. You're building something, a business, a body, a vision, but instead of encouragement, you feel tension. You achieve something, and she suddenly needs to top it. You get a win, she finds a way to center herself in the spotlight. It's not open war, but it's a quiet contest. And that's not love. That's rivalry dressed up as intimacy. Now don't confuse playful teasing with toxic competition. The former creates connection, laughter, sexual tension. The latter, it erodes your masculinity, your focus, your peace. When a woman truly respects you, she doesn't feel threatened by your growth, she's inspired by it. She doesn't try to match you, she supports you in becoming unmatched. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Jason, 30, a graphic designer from Austin, had just landed a huge freelance client. He was excited, passionate, motivated. He shared the news with Emma, his girlfriend of 2 years, expecting her support. Instead, her reaction was oddly distant. 2 days later, she randomly mentioned she was thinking of launching a design course online, though she'd never shown any interest in teaching before. The timing wasn't coincidence. It was her way of reclaiming the emotional upper hand, of reminding Jason, "You're not outgrowing me, I can do it too." Here's the danger. If you stay in this dynamic long enough, you begin to shrink yourself just to keep the peace. You start hiding your ambitions. You downplay your victories. You become a smaller version of yourself so she doesn't feel insecure. But a man who lives in suppression never walks in purpose. He simply survives. Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And if your thoughts are constantly shaped by tension, second-guessing, and unspoken competition in your own relationship, you're being pulled away from your center, from your mission, from your higher self." The irony? The more you water yourself down to keep her secure, the less attractive you become to her. Women don't truly want to compete with men they admire. They want to admire men who don't flinch at being admired. It's masculine calm, unapologetic growth, the kind of energy that says, "I'm going to win with or without your applause." If you sense she's competing with you, test it gently. Share a win and watch her response. Does she light up, or does she subtly shift the attention back to herself? And if the pattern continues, ask yourself, do you want a partner or a silent rival? The truth is, when a woman's feminine core is intact, she celebrates your expansion because it means protection, power, and provision. But when she's in competition mode, she's not operating from love. She's operating from fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of being insignificant, fear of not being the center of your world. And here's the deal. You're not here to revolve around her insecurities. You're here to lead. Now, if you've experienced this in your own relationship, don't just sit in silence. Drop a comment below and claim it. 3 words. I choose power. Let it be a declaration that you're done dimming your light just to protect someone else's ego. And if you're wondering what happens when you stop competing back and simply keep ascending, well, let's just say things get interesting. Let's move on. Sign 4. She never apologizes, even when she's wrong. Let's talk about one of the most underrated red flags a man can ignore. A woman who refuses to apologize ever. Now, at first, this might not seem like a big deal. Maybe you think, it's just how she is, or she'll cool off and come around. But here's the truth. Most men don't learn until they're emotionally exhausted. When a woman can't take accountability, she's not protecting her pride. She's protecting her power over you. Every healthy relationship needs one thing at its core: mutual respect. And respect isn't just about being nice when things are easy. It's about how someone acts when they're clearly in the wrong. It's about whether they choose truth over ego. If she messes up, disrespects you, crosses a line, and her response is to stonewall, deflect, or flip the blame, that's not a sign of strength. That's a sign of emotional immaturity. Worse, it's strategic. When a woman never apologizes, she's telling you one thing loud and clear: your feelings don't matter as much as her control. You bring up how something made you feel. You express hurt, calmly, maybe even vulnerably. But instead of meeting you halfway, she minimizes it. You're too sensitive. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't mean it like that. Every time you let that slide, you're teaching her that you'll tolerate emotional disrespect just to keep the peace. And here's where it gets dangerous over time. This trains you to second-guess your own experiences. You start wondering, was I overreacting? Maybe I was too harsh. You start apologizing for how her actions made you feel. That's not accountability, that's manipulation. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." Now read that again. That's real strength. That's real humility. A woman who can't admit she was wrong isn't just avoiding truth, she's avoiding growth. And if she's not growing, she's stagnating. And if she's stagnating, she's dragging you with her. A man on his mission cannot be weighed down by someone who treats apology like a weakness. A Stoic man sees his emotions clearly, processes them, and speaks truth with calm conviction. He doesn't yell. He doesn't beg. He simply states the standard and watches who respects it. So what do you do if you're with a woman like this? Simple. Stop waiting for her to do what she's never practiced. Start observing. The next time she disrespects you, don't argue. Don't plead. Just pause. Let silence do the heavy lifting. Watch what she does with that space. If she fills it with reflection and takes ownership, good. If she fills it with blame and justification, your answer is already there. Remember, a woman who respects you will always want to repair what she's damaged, not out of guilt, but out of care, because she values the connection more than the power play. One final thought. Never apologize just to keep her comfortable, especially when you've done nothing wrong. That kind of self-betrayal breeds resentment, and resentment is the silent killer of masculine energy. You lose your edge, your drive, your clarity. So take this to heart: you don't need an apology to move on. You need clarity. And once you have it, act like a man who knows his worth. That alone will separate the women who are capable of love from the ones who are just playing emotional chess. Ready for the next one? Let's keep going. Sign 5. She dismantles your peace, then blames you for it. There's something quietly devastating about being with a woman who doesn't raise her voice, but still finds a way to wreck your inner world. See, not all damage comes from shouting matches or explosive drama. Sometimes it's much more subtle. It's when you come home tired, seeking calm, and you get a cold shoulder. When you try to share something meaningful and it gets dismissed like it never mattered. A woman doesn't have to throw chaos at you. She just has to chip away at your sense of safety. Slowly, quietly, repeatedly. Take Marcus, 36, a business consultant from Texas. He was in a 3-year relationship with Erica, 33. On paper it looked perfect. She wasn't loud, never cheated, never openly disrespectful, but over time, he started feeling off. His mind wasn't clear. His goals lost traction. Why? Because every peaceful moment was followed by tension. Every decision was questioned. His opinions were subtly mocked, his routines disrupted, and every time he finally spoke up, she turned it around. "Why are you always so cold, so distant?" And that's the trick. The woman who ruins your peace doesn't blame herself for the shift, she blames you for reacting to it. Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But in Marcus's case and in yours, if this feels familiar, that suffering becomes real when your home becomes a place of mental warfare. This kind of woman won't throw punches, she throws confusion. She doesn't scream at you, she makes you question yourself. And when you finally lose patience or withdraw, you become the villain in a story she wrote with your silence. You must remember this. Peace isn't a luxury, it's your standard. And any woman who undermines that standard, no matter how soft her tone or pretty her smile, is not your partner. She's your distraction. Real love isn't always easy, but it doesn't leave you feeling mentally unstable. A high-value woman will challenge you, yes, but never in ways that erode your clarity. She'll hold you accountable with respect, not criticism. She'll know when to speak and when to simply let you breathe. If you find yourself apologizing for needing space, for wanting calm, or for setting boundaries that protect your mind, you're already too deep. Marcus eventually stepped away, not because he stopped caring, but because he realized caring shouldn't cost him his sanity. When he left, she called him selfish, but the truth was, he finally chose himself. Now, ask yourself this: when was the last time you truly felt calm in your relationship? Not just relief between storms, but lasting mental peace. If that question hits home, it's time to make a move. Fellas, have you ever had to choose between your peace and a woman you loved? Drop your answer below and claim your clarity with, "I choose peace." And trust me, if you think this is as deep as it gets, you'll want to hear what's coming next. It might just explain something you've been ignoring for far too long. Let's keep going. Sign 6. Her affection feels conditional, based on control. There's a kind of affection that doesn't warm you, it weighs on you. A kind of love that feels like a reward, not a natural expression. You know the kind I'm talking about. 1 minute, she's sweet, affectionate, maybe even deeply caring. The next, the switch flips. She's cold, detached, emotionally distant, and you're left asking yourself, what did I do wrong? But here's the thing, maybe you didn't do anything wrong. Maybe her affection was never about you, it was about leverage. When a woman's affection starts to feel transactional, like you have to earn it in ways that aren't healthy or reciprocal, it's no longer love, it's currency. A currency she uses to steer, manipulate, and control your behavior. This is one of the most overlooked red flags in modern relationships. Because on the surface, it can look like passion, like intensity. But scratch that surface just a bit, and you'll see the pattern. Affection becomes a tool, a means to an end. And if you step out of line even slightly, she pulls it away. Now, Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And affection, real affection, should be freely given, not dangled like bait. In a healthy dynamic, affection flows without fear. You don't have to overthink every word, every action, or walk on eggshells just to avoid an emotional freeze-out. But when you're dealing with conditional affection, it creates an emotional economy built on compliance. You comply, she's warm. You disagree, she shuts down. You assert yourself, she withdraws love. That isn't intimacy. That's control dressed in soft words and warm touches. And over time, it chips away at your sense of emotional safety. You begin to edit yourself. You hesitate to express your needs. You sacrifice your comfort to maintain the illusion of harmony. But harmony built on suppression isn't harmony at all. It's silent conflict, and it's one you're always losing. Let's break this down further. In a relationship rooted in genuine connection, disagreements happen, boundaries are tested, but affection, that baseline sense of care and emotional availability, doesn't evaporate because of friction. It remains. It weathers the storm with you. But when affection is conditional, it's used like a punishment or a prize. It trains you, like a behavioral system. And before long, you're not loving her, you're trying not to lose her warmth. That's a very different thing. You're not supposed to feel like a boy trying to earn gold stars in exchange for love. You're a man, and your emotional well-being should not be tied to someone else's mood swings or silent treatments. A Stoic man understands this. External things, even someone's affection, cannot be relied on for inner peace. You must cultivate stability within, so you are not thrown off balance by someone else's need for control. You don't argue for love. You don't beg for connection. You don't earn affection, you exchange it freely. So ask yourself this: do you feel safe expressing yourself in your relationship, or does every honest moment come with the risk of losing her tenderness? Because here's the hard truth: love that disappears the moment you speak your truth isn't love, it's manipulation. Now tell me, have you ever been in a situation where affection came with conditions? Share your truth below and drop this in the comments. I deserve real love. And just when you think you've seen the worst of her emotional games, what comes next might reveal the most dangerous sign of all. Keep watching. Sign 7. She uses silence not to reflect, but to punish. Let's talk about a silence that doesn't bring peace but tension. A silence not rooted in thought but in power. You see, in every healthy relationship, there are moments of quiet, time to cool down, time to reflect. But when silence becomes a weapon, that's a whole different story. This isn't the kind of silence that comes from needing space to process feelings. It's not introspective or respectful. It's calculated, intentional, cold. It's the silence that screams, "You did something wrong, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. Figure it out, and maybe I'll acknowledge you again." Take Tyler, 34, for example. He's been dating Alyssa, 32, for just over a year. Anytime they disagree, she retreats. Not for an hour or a day, but sometimes for 3 or 4. No texts, no calls, not even a glance when they pass each other in the apartment. When he tries to communicate, she acts like he doesn't exist, and when she finally does speak again, it's like nothing ever happened. No apology, no discussion, just a resumption of control. What Alyssa is doing isn't seeking clarity, it's asserting dominance. And Tyler, like so many men, is stuck in limbo, constantly chasing closure that never comes. Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That applies here. When someone uses silence as a punishment, your response shouldn't be to chase or to plead. It should be to stand firm in your peace, to not mirror their game, but to step out of it entirely. The thing about silent treatment is that it creates confusion. It makes you question your worth, your actions, even your sanity. It stirs anxiety, because human beings are wired for connection. And when someone you care about suddenly withholds that connection, it sends your nervous system into overdrive. But the worst part, you start adjusting yourself to avoid it. You start over-explaining. You start walking on eggshells. You tiptoe around potential triggers just to keep her from shutting down. And before long, you're not in a relationship, you're in a silent prison with velvet walls. Real love doesn't require punishment to teach lessons. It requires communication. Conflict isn't solved through silence. It's solved through honest, sometimes uncomfortable dialogue. But when she chooses to disappear into that silence instead of facing the discomfort of conversation, she's not being emotionally mature. She's being emotionally manipulative. Tyler eventually realized that. And when he stopped responding with anxiety, when he stopped reaching out just to break her silence, he noticed something. Alyssa became unsettled. Her control mechanism was no longer effective. That silence she once used like a sword, it became a boomerang, and that shift in energy changed the power dynamic entirely. If you're dealing with this kind of silent warfare, ask yourself, is this really how you want to live? In constant guessing games, always wondering when the next emotional freeze out is coming. You deserve better than someone who vanishes when things get real. You deserve someone who stays present, even in discomfort. Because that's what emotional maturity looks like. Let me hear from you in the comments. Ever been frozen out like this? Type this below to reclaim your voice. I choose connection. And just when you think her silence is the worst of it, what if the next sign reveals something even darker about her intentions? Stay with me. Sign 8. Her beauty demands loyalty she doesn't return. Let's talk about a brutal but necessary truth. Physical beauty has power. A lot of power. It can open doors, turn heads, and bend rules. But when that beauty becomes a weapon for manipulation, when it becomes a tool to extract unwavering loyalty without offering the same in return, you're no longer in a relationship, you're in a performance. And you're the only one playing by the rules. Some women use their beauty not just as a passive asset, but as a form of control. They expect exclusivity, commitment, and sacrifice, all while keeping themselves emotionally unavailable, flirtatious with others, or simply indifferent to your investment. And the worst part? You might still feel lucky to be there. This is not attraction, it's conditioning. Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The same applies to relationships. The real power is not in having someone beautiful by your side, but in not being enslaved by their appearance. If her looks make you feel like you're constantly earning your place in her life, then you're not in love. You're in submission. When loyalty becomes a one-way street, driven by fear of losing her or hope of her changing, it chips away at your dignity. You begin to tolerate behaviors that you would never accept from anyone else. That's the trap. Her beauty becomes the cage, and your silence is the lock. This kind of woman often subtly reminds you of your good fortune to be with her. Maybe it's the way she dismisses your needs or the jokes about how many other men would kill to be in your shoes. These are not compliments. They're warnings dressed as praise. And over time, they condition you to believe that any challenge to her behavior is a risk to your entire relationship. But here's the truth. A woman who respects you doesn't want you on your knees. She wants you standing tall beside her. She doesn't weaponize her beauty to control. She shares her presence as an equal, not as a queen expecting servitude. If you find yourself always chasing her approval, second-guessing your worth, or hesitating to voice your needs, ask yourself, would she do the same for you? Would she chase your validation? Or does she simply expect it, without ever reciprocating? You were not designed to orbit someone else's ego. You were built to lead your own life with strength, clarity, and dignity. As Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. If her beauty makes you forget your value, it's not her fault. It's your illusion, and it's time to break it. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself loyal to someone who never returned it? Drop a comment and type, "I reclaim myself," because the next truth we're about to uncover will challenge everything you thought you knew about desire. Sign 9. She praises other men more than she uplifts you. There's a moment every man dreads when the woman he's with starts speaking about other men with a glint in her eye she rarely shows for him. Maybe it's the way she talks about her male co-worker's ambition, her trainer's discipline, or some actor's emotional depth. The words may seem innocent on the surface, but the subtext cuts deep. Admiration, not for you, but for someone else. This is not about being insecure, it's about emotional imbalance. Praise, when shared within a relationship, should reinforce mutual value. When her compliments flow freely for men outside the relationship, but she remains silent or dismissive about your efforts, that's not just oversight, it's intentional neglect. It's her way of reminding you that your value is conditional compared to someone else's presence. Let's take Jake, 34, and Megan, 30. Jake worked hard to make partner at his firm, expecting that the woman he loved would be proud. Instead, Megan congratulated him, then immediately pivoted the conversation to how her ex used to balance work and still find time to write music. It's subtle, but destructive. The message isn't, "You did great." It's, "You could do better like him." A woman who uses praise of others as a tool inside a relationship is engaging in a quiet form of comparison warfare. You're not meant to feel empowered. You're meant to feel just inadequate enough to seek her validation again. That cycle is control masquerading as casual conversation. The Stoics warned us against this need for external approval. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." When she praises another man more than she uplifts you, and you feel the sting, that's a moment to pause. Are you grounded in your own value or swaying in her emotional winds? Of course, a confident man doesn't fear her admiration of others, but he notices when it's weaponized. He sees when it's not balanced by appreciation of who he is and what he does, and he doesn't beg for validation. He steps back, observes, and recalibrates. Relationships should inspire. If her words inspire doubt more than direction, especially through a pattern of external male praise, that's a sign, not of your inadequacy, but of her inability to see your worth without a comparison chart. Now, ask yourself, does she speak more glowingly about other men than she ever does about you? If the answer is yes, don't confront, recenter. Your value isn't a debate, it's a fact. One that doesn't need applause to remain true. Now, for the men watching this, I want you to leave a comment right now and finish this sentence. I know my value. Just those 4 words. Let it be your reminder that her comparisons don't define your worth. And if you think that was revealing, wait until you hear what's coming in the next part. You won't look at emotional manipulation the same again. Let's keep going. Sign 10. Her body stays close, but her soul pulls away. You know the feeling. She's right there beside you physically. Maybe you're lying in bed together. Maybe you're sitting on the same couch. Her hand might even brush against yours. But something feels hollow, cold, not in temperature, but in presence. It's like kissing someone whose mind is miles away. She's there, but she's not with you. And brother, that's not just a phase, that's a signal. When a woman stays physically present but emotionally distant, it's often because the relationship has become a transaction. Her body remains as a placeholder, but her soul, her emotional intimacy, vulnerability, warmth has exited the room. And men, because we're wired to interpret physical closeness as a sign of connection, often miss this entirely. Until it's too late. Emotional disconnection is far more dangerous than physical absence, because at least when someone leaves, you know they're gone. But when someone stays and stops showing up emotionally, it creates confusion, self-doubt, and eventually collapse. Let's put this in context. You start noticing that your conversations get shorter. Her eyes don't light up when she looks at you anymore. She stops asking about your day. There's no longer curiosity in her voice, no playfulness in her touch. She does what's required, shows up to events, replies to your messages, but it all feels mechanical, loveless, soulless. This is a sign that she's emotionally clocked out, and now she's just collecting the relational paycheck. The Stoics warned us about this kind of internal detachment. Epictetus once said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." When a woman pulls away emotionally but not physically, it disrupts your internal compass. You start questioning your worth, your actions, your reality. But in truth, what you're feeling isn't about your inadequacy, it's about her unspoken exit. Why does she stay then? Many reasons: comfort, habit, fear of change, or worse, because being present without giving presence gives her power. She controls the pace. She defines the level of closeness. She decides when or if emotional intimacy returns. But you have a decision too. You can either cling harder, trying to pull her soul back through her skin, or you can step into your own power and recognize that her presence without participation is not love, it's obligation. And that's not what you deserve. Let's be real. A man with purpose doesn't chase half-hearted love. He doesn't mistake proximity for passion. He knows when the emotional energy has left the room, and he doesn't beg for its return. Instead, he centers himself. He refocuses on the only soul he can control, his own. Because when your self-respect is intact, you don't tolerate being close to someone who's already left you emotionally. So if you're in this situation, if you're lying next to someone who feels 1,000 miles away, take this as your wake-up call. It's not unmanly to notice. It's not weak to feel the void. What is weak is pretending it's not there and slowly dying inside. You want a woman who shows up with her heart, not just her body. A woman who's emotionally invested, not emotionally evasive. Someone who leans in, not just lays next to you. And if you're watching this right now thinking, damn, that's my situation, then say it out loud in the comments below. I deserve more. 3 simple words, but they separate the man who waits in silent agony from the one who walks in self-worth. You've made it to the final sign, and now it's not just about recognizing the red flags, it's about deciding what kind of man you'll be when you see them. Because awareness without action is just self-inflicted suffering. And you, brother, were built for more. And there it is, 10 subtle but powerful signs that her presence in your life might not be as real as it seems. These aren't just relationship quirks, they're warnings. Warnings that something deeper is off, and that your peace, your masculinity, and your purpose might be paying the price. Throughout this video, we've peeled back the quiet truths. Most men ignore the behaviors that seem small, but slowly unravel your strength from the inside. If even one of these signs hit close to home, take it seriously, not to blame her, not to play victim, but to recognize where your boundaries, your standards, and your self-respect need to rise. Because the Stoic man doesn't just endure, he evolves. He sees the truth without flinching, and then chooses what aligns with his highest self. If this video brought clarity, strength, or even a necessary sting, there's more waiting for you. This channel is where we dig deeper, where we redefine what it means to be powerful, grounded, and untouchable in a world that's constantly testing you. Subscribe not just to support the channel, but to support the version of you that refuses to settle for anything less than truth and strength. I'll see you in the next one.